Hey, it's Curly. I think this is actually the very first mat I ever used for one of these deck profile videos on this channel. I don't remember if it's one that I recorded and then decided not to upload, but in any case, today we're going to be going over a deck that is not from D-BT06. I have two decks from D-BT06 that I really want to go over, that being Heroes and Baromagus, which is more or less what I've been playing mainly, but Baromagus I'm still working on a build that I'm happy with. And I had a build for Heroes that I was happy with, but I'm actually tweaking it a little bit and trying out a couple of different things. So instead, we're going to be talking today about Grimoire, Etoile, Luticia. Luticia? Luticia is what I keep saying, but it's actually Luticia. Grimoire, Etoile, Luticia here is the unit that I was most excited about when they revealed Lyrical Set 3. Lyrical Set 3's reveal was kind of controversial, which is ironic considering the whole set being released is kind of controversial, but it was controversial because of the fact that they revealed 6 new ride lines for Lyrical, and most of us were kind of confused on how they were planning on supporting 6 new ride lines when the previous 8 only maybe 3 of them were fully fleshed out and the others were kind of dead in the water even after 2 sets of release. But Luticia always caught my eye here just because she has like this cool dark elf look and she has like this magician thing, so I figured she'd be something like magical themed, and I found out later on that she's actually from Dark States, which obviously makes me love her a lot more aside from the fact that she is a beautiful dark-skinned elf. But I think it is either the same illustrator or the same character designer as Thegria, so I may just have a thing for her cards in general. But in any case, Luticia has a sort of playstyle that I kind of gravitate to and kind of not. But let's just go into it here. So when you play normal order, this unit gets 5k into the end of the turn. You basically play orders for this deck to work, so you can be able to get this 5k easily. However, you can of course only play orders once per turn, but we'll get into those orders in a bit. Then she has a main skill here where once per turn, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, you can counterblast 1. Perform all the following according to the number of cursed play cards in your soul. If you have 2 or more cursed play cards in your soul, you draw a card and this unit gets 5k to the end of that turn, I'm assuming. It actually doesn't say. Interesting. So you just get 5k. But I'm assuming it just means at the end of the turn, or maybe that battle. 4 or more cursed play cards in your soul to the end of that battle, or rather at the end of that battle I should say, you can discard a card from your hand to stand this unit on Vanguard Circle and you get -1 drive to the end of the turn, so you have a re-standing Vanguard. That can get relatively big. Before Persona Ride, between the first 2 skills you can actually get a 23k Vanguard that can restand, and if you're on Persona Ride, that's 33, and that's a really nice number to hit. But you can only do this if you have these cursed play cards in your soul. And that's basically the main thing with Luticia, is playing these cursed play orders, getting them into soul, getting your advantage from playing them, and then getting the advantage of having them in soul in order to restand your Vanguard. Now these cursed orders, or we'll just call them cursed orders, I guess maybe that's a lot easier. We only have 2 of them right now. There's the Cursed Sugar Sparkle and the, I guess, Ananthem is what you say that? Slap Twinkle. One is a normal order, the other one is actually a blitz order, and they're all pretty funny, considering that if you look at the art, you notice that you see Luticia just freaking standing there with fireworks going on, and that's one of the reasons why I love this card more, because she's just like awkwardly like, the hell do I do here? But these orders are very, very cool. So what they do here is we have the Cursed Sugar Sparkle here, who says if you have a Luticia Vanguard, then you put this card into the soul, the order, you soul charge 1, and you choose one of your units from your soul with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard, call it out, and it gets 5k to the end of the turn. So you can use your soul as a resource, get some cards out, somewhat Pale Moon-like. One might even say Baromagus-like. Then we have the Anantha Slap Twinkle here, which is a blitz order that says if you have, again, Luticia, you can put this card into your soul, choose one of your units, and it gets 15k into the end of that battle. So it basically acts like an additional trigger in hand. But it also has the effect where if you have 4 more of these in soul, you get to draw a card. So not only do you get to play something that gives you 15k shield, but then you can also draw a card mid-guard. So you can draw into another guard that you can use to guard. So you can play this, get 15k, draw from the effect, get a crit, use that to guard, which is pretty nice. Not to mention just in general being able to draw mid-battle and being able to increase your hand size and guard size is very good. So it's very nice that you can activate this from turn 1, stave off some aggression by also building up your soul in order to actually get to the requirement to restamp Luticia. Ride line, as always, is pretty simple. We got ourselves physical training from scratch Luticia. You can play any starter you want. I just really like the art on this card. We got ourselves the grade 1, staying in even on days off Luticia. She's just like me, for real, for real. And then finally, we got ourselves the heavy leaning on expectations Luticia. So the grade 1 Luticia says that when you ride over her with the grade 2, you can put a card from your hand to the bottom of the deck, search your deck for up to 1 cursed play card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. Ideally, what you want to search for this is the Blitz order, so you can use it next turn, possibly to guard, or you can use the normal order in order to be aggressive on that turn. But the main thing about this card that's kind of nuts is that you can just put back any card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. And you end up shuffling after that because you search the deck, so you have to shuffle. So this means if you start with, you know, a bunch of crits, triggers, specifically the over trigger, you can actually put that back into the deck and then check it off later on. Got ourselves heavy leaning on expectations Luticia here. So she says if your soul has a cursed play card, which you should have gotten from the grade 1, if you were to ride the grade 3 Luticia, then instead of discarding a card, you can just Soul Blast. So you can maintain some hand size, which is very nice. You tend to soul charge random crap sometimes that you don't want on your soul, so you can get rid of that. So it's not that huge of an issue. You don't need a high number of cards in your soul, and you will have a decent number of cards in your soul. So this isn't a very high cost to pay. And of course, for the grade 3, we just have the grade 3 Luticia, which is the only one that we have at the moment. So for grade 3s, we don't have too many this time around. It's just 3 copies of our Persona Ride, more Luticias in main deck, and finally we play this card here, the Literacy, the thing I have trouble with, Literacy Act Clarissa. There's no L, I was gonna say Clarissa, but this is Clarissa here. In general, my list is pretty standard except for this card here. The card that people usually play is this one here, Floating in Paradise, Le Divine. I was going to play this in addition to the grade 3 that we currently have here, the Clarissa. But the thing I don't like about Floating in Paradise is it is a grade 2 with 10k, so you can't intercept with it when it's on board. But this says on Act on Vanguard, or Rearguard Circle, once per turn, if your soul has 2 or more cursed play cards, you can Soul Blast 1. This unit gets 10k to the end of the turn. This means you have to do it before battle phase, so your opponent can very easily check a trigger and make this completely useless. Whereas we have here the super Chad Carissa here, who says when this unit attacks a Vanguard, if your soul has 2 or more Curse Play cards, you Soul Blast 1, then this unit gets 10k to the end of that battle. After that battle, she puts herself into the soul. So you can clear out your front row, and she actually refunds the soul that you use for her, which is really cool. Plus, she's also 13, so she doesn't even need to use the skill to actually be able to hit in later stages when you're up against a grade 3 Vanguard. I find this card to be much better than this one, just again, because you don't have to, you know, pay it preemptively. Even though against the soul is not really that big of an issue, but like I just don't have to if I don't want to, right? In general, you might not even be playing the grade 2. I know some play the grade 2, some don't, but most of them play Yuka, which means you don't really need the fact that this is a grade 2 to intercept, because you might just end up bouncing it to your hand anyways. For the grade 2s, we have ourselves Gracioso Prince Meredith here, and then just 2 copies of that, and then 4 copies of the most important grade 2 for this deck, which is the Overflow Happiness Naustria. Meredith has a very simple skill. When this hits a Vanguard, look at top 7 cards from the top of your deck, search for 1 order, add it to your hand, and shuffle your deck. Just use this to try and get cursed plays. You can swap this in for the Le Divine if you'd like instead. It doesn't really matter in general. You don't have too many issues searching for most of your orders. It's just some cases you just need the one more order. So this isn't half bad, especially if like you hit this, get the blitz order, which you can use on your opponent's next turn following this battle to then be able to guard and have 4 in your soul. Other than that, you can try some other cards. There is another card that you can use instead of this that I actually have in the grade 1 slot. You can maybe play an additional copy of that and then play an additional copy of the grade 3 or however you want it to be. In general, I think Luticia is actually pretty flexible and there's a lot of room for what you can do. It's just everyone plays the one list because that's what they deem to be the best list. But I think that you can actually play around with Luticia a lot just because her mechanics are pretty flexible. You don't need like specific units or anything like that. You just need to play the orders and then they can pull out any card, so it doesn't really matter what you have in your deck. But what you do need to play here is the Overflow Happiness Nustria. I'm not really sure how to say your name, but this says if this is placed on River Circle, if you have a Vanguard Luticia in its card name, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck. This is mandatory, by the way. Choose one of them, put them into your soul, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is one of the ways you can very easily fill up your soul with your orders, because this just lets you look at top 3, put one of them into your soul. Ideally, the Cursed Play. I got distracted because I was reading her like text here, and I thought it was like some sort of crazy mistranslation or something, but it's just because she has like food in her mouth, so she's just talking with a mouthful. Then her second skill here is auto on Rearguard Circle. When this unit attacks, if your soul has 2 or more Curse Play cards, this unit gets 5k to the end of the battle. But if you have 4 Curse Play or more in your soul, she gets 15k instead of 5. So this is your main attacker because you can swing in for 25k, 35k on Persona Ride. This is really the most important card for Luticia. Everything else is kind of whatever as long as you get your orders, but you desperately need this as your main attacker and also to get your soul. She just works so good with Luticia. The grade 1s are where the bulk of the deck is. Of course, as mentioned earlier, we're going to be playing 4 copies of the Blitz Order, Curse Play, and Anthema Slap Twinkle, and then 4 copies of the normal Curse Play order, which is Curse Sugar Sparkle. We got ourselves 4 copies of the very expensive, very elusive Cooling Heart Yuka, which is the new Melty or the new staple from this lyrical set. You don't need this. We'll talk about that in a bit. I managed to be very lucky and pull all 4 of them. And I didn't have to pay specifically $30 for a copy, but we got ourselves 3 copies of the Clear Shimmer Aura here, and then finally 3 PGs and 1 of the new Blitz Order. We already went over these when we went over Luticia, but just a few things I wanted to mention. This is the Cursed Sugar Sparkle. This is pretty good because it lets you be very aggressive even on turn 1, because you can call out even the starter and it'll be 11k, so I can actually swing in. Then the Slap is very good because it is a Blitz Order that again is just 15k shield unless you draw a card as well going into soul. You can get around some guard restricts because you'll be playing this instead of guarding it, so it's very nice that you automatically have 4 of these that you can play as part of your deck. In terms of Blitz orders, you do need to remember that if you play the Elementaria Sanctitude here, you can't play both a Curse Play and this. You can only play 1 order per turn. So I had debated for a while on using the full 4 unit PGs instead of this, just so they don't clash, but I've not really ran into an issue, but it's just something to keep in mind. Then we got ourselves 3 copies of Clear Shimmer Aura here. So this just says when this hits while boosted, you can retire this unit, search your deck for up to 1 order, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. It is unfortunately 6k, which is why I only played 3 of these. I originally didn't want to play any of these, but what you can do with this is that you can, for free, search out your order, and you can use it, for example, turns 1 and 2, where your opponent may not want to guard and boost behind your Vanguard, and also more easily break through their guard, and more or less guarantee that you can search your order. So if you mulligan for one of your orders, and then search one out with the ride line, and then use this to get a 3rd, you will more than likely every game hit the 4 that you need. You can also combine this, funny enough, with the Meredith, and if they both hit, you might even be able to get both of your orders, or 2 of orders, just like that. Finally, let's go over the Cooling Heart Yuka here. You don't need to play this in the deck. She doesn't specifically benefit Luticia. She's just a pretty good card in every lyrical deck, which is what has made her a staple. And that is because she has two very useful skills. The first one is that when another unit is placed in the same column, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets 5k, so she becomes a 13k booster, which makes you hit pretty good numbers. She also has a skill that says at the end of the battle that if boosted rearguard, you can Soul Blast 1, choose the boosted rearguard and put it back into your hand. So this means two things. You can go ahead and return this into your hand to be able to use it next turn and keep it safe from getting bombed. And you can also use this again to attack, and then use the skill again on place next turn to bring stuff back. You can also use this with triggers, because 8 plus 5 is actually 13. So even without her first boost, you can play a trigger in front of her, attack with it, and then bounce the trigger back to your hand to be able to guard with it. But it actually won't be 13, it will actually be 18 because of her plus 5 skill. Which means your opponent won't actually be able to just intercept an attack coming in from a trigger. They'll actually have to call a little bit more guard than that, which is pretty funny. And you can just bounce the card back to your hand to use it to guard. It also allows you to, in general, get away with some matchups such as maybe Bavsagra that tries to retire your front row, or something like maybe even Graffitia, so you can protect some of your cards while losing Yuka instead. Other than that, again, you don't really need her. You have some other cards. I don't know if this is the best replacement, but just offhand, you have this card here, In Search of Something Big, Blair, which is just a common that says if it boosts, if you have 2 or more cursed plays, she becomes 13 because she gets plus 5. So it basically hits the same number as Yuka, you just can't return stuff to hand. But, you know, I'm sure plenty of good grade 1s that you can use just so you don't have to use this really expensive card. Finally, we have ourselves Oncoming in Private Deziel here, who is going to be our perfect card. So you can use this to guard from hand, and if you have 2 or more cards in your hand, you discard, and for that battle, whatever you're guarding for does not get hit. We're also playing one of the Elementiera Sanctitude here, which you will see in pretty much every deck from now on. This counts as a Sentinel, so you can only have 3 of the normal PGs plus this, so you're going to have 4 Sentinels in your deck. And this has the unique ability of being a Blitz Order, so it's not a unit. So once again, similar to our Slap Twinkle, you don't play this, or you don't guard with this, you play this from hand, so it gets around a lot of the restrictions of guard restricts that say you can't call cards from hand to guard, for example. But also, if your opponent has Triple Drive, so if they're a grade 4, be it a grade 4 main deck, or even the upcoming Chrono Jet that has these strides that go into grade 4, you can use this for free, so you don't have to discard anything. Otherwise, it works like a normal PG, except you can only use this if you're on grade 3 or less. So again, if you're on grade 4, you can't use this. After that, this is removed, so you can't recycle this in something like Zorga, but it is nice to keep this in mind, especially when you're swinging in for game. Remember that some of your previous game winners might not be the case, just because of this thing existing. The triggers, as you might expect for restanding Vanguard, are going to be a total of 8 crits here. We're actually not playing the soul crit. We don't really need the soul. We're not going to really be using it to boost. And also, we'd rather have these because these hit better numbers with Yuka, because they're both 5k based. We're not going to be playing draws either. We're going to be playing fronts here, 3 of the effect fronts, because of the fact that you can restand, and the front gives you a lot more pressure when you're trying to, you know, swing in. Your opponent can't easily as guard with, you know, something that's not a PG, because you can very easily check a front, and your whole front row becomes massive. Not to mention you keep that power going further. You also don't want to deck out from playing draws because you're constantly soul charging. We're going to be playing 2 normal heals here, and we're going to be playing 2 of the new effect heals. I want to play a couple of more of these, but again, these are 4k based. And I also like this girl because she's like a ghost, and Luticia is like part of like the occult club or something like that in lyrical, so I figured I'd give her like the ghost triggers because that's kind of funny. But we have the new effect triggers, which I've become a big fan of. I don't know how much I like them in this deck specifically, again because of Yuka and how they work, but we have 1 of each. One that says if your opponent's unit that is attacking has a crit that is not from a trigger, this becomes a 25k shield. And the other one says if the opponent's unit that is attacking has restood, This turn this becomes 25k shield, but they start at 10k shield. Since you have stuff like the Blitz Order, and you can recycle your triggers more or less, losing out on the shield value and then evening it out on certain matchups works out just fine. And of course we're playing the lyrical, one of the lyrical overtriggers here. Lyrical overtrigger is absolutely busted. You should play it over. Unfortunately, the Owaria, because this is just way stronger. If you check this for the rest of the game, all of your rear guards get plus 10k, not your Vanguard, but every single unit, even if you know, the next turn passes, they still get 10k. If you play it from hand, it gets 10k. At any point, everything gets 10k. So that's insane. You should play this. It's much better somehow than actually just for one turn getting 200 millions. So definitely play that. And then that's it. That's the whole deck. But in any case, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope I went over it relatively quickly enough and relatively simple enough to give you the quick gist of it. This is a deck that is going to become showing up a lot. It's already been topping some tournaments just because of how strong and aggressive it can be. So I just thought I'd cover it really quickly, also just because I really like her. And I might in the future actually cover a not so standard build of hers that maybe doesn't play Yuka and all that other stuff. But until then, take care of yourself, play Vanguard, and have yourself a damn good one.